Lucu. Lah.
Ini otomatis.
Diujukin men. Otomatis. Iya.
Ini biru.
Slider ini lurus. Pinter.
about the creative and technical aspects of using focus to make your films look more cinematic and more polished. I'm going to use Filmic Pro to show you how you can achieve great looking video with your smartphone with nothing more than a low-cost camera app. Many new filmmakers often overlook the use of focus as a tool, as they concentrate on other things like LUTs and smooth, stabilized footage. But having shot many films myself and worked with professional cinematographers, my experience is that getting the right things in focus at the right time is absolutely key to cinematic video. Apart from the technical side of getting correct focus, there is a creative side too. But what's the difference between deep focus and shallow focus? Deep focus is a cinematic technique using a large depth of field. Put simply, depth of field is the range of things which are in focus. Focus, virtually everything is in focus. As it happens, smartphones are excellent at achieving deep focus because they have small sensors and lenses with small apertures. Having everything that's in the frame in focus makes cinematography easier. To some extent, the camera operator doesn't have to worry about making sure certain objects are in focus because everything is in focus. For example, if you are filming a pan shot, say, of an actor who's moving away from the camera, you don't have to think so much about maintaining focus on the actor if everything is all depth of field. In shallow focus, one distance from the lens is in focus, while the rest is out of focus. Shallow focus is typically used to emphasize one part of the image over another. Some form of shallow depth of field is now used in almost all professional filmmaking. This is because having the background and foreground out of focus is the easiest way to create a sense of depth in the image. A shallow depth of field also creates the bokeh effect, which is when lights in the background form blurred oval shapes. Having bokeh lights can make night shots look very beautiful and romantic. In some shots, the filmmaker takes this effect to the extreme, while in others, the filmmaker prefers to use it more subtly. This is a creative decision based on how you want the audience to feel and the mood you want to convey. Having a highly blurred background makes it less distracting and creates a more romantic, dreamy effect. Meanwhile, having the background just slightly out of focus lets the audience see what's going on in the background at the same time as giving the background some distance and separation from the subject. Another thing to bear in mind is that if the background always has the most extreme bokeh, the effect has less impact. For example, let's say you come to an emotional romantic scene and you want to increase the sense of romance by using bokeh. Well, if the whole film is full of extreme bokeh, up until that point, it will just be more of the same, won't it? On the other hand, if you use it sparingly, then applying it for the big romantic scene will add extra power to the effect. How do you create shallow depth of field with a smartphone? There are a couple of ways to achieve a more shallow depth of field using a smartphone. One is to place the camera as near to the subject as possible. The other is to use conversion lenses, like a telephoto or even a shallow depth of field converter. How do you create a sense of depth in the image without shallow focus depth? One of the most famous uses of deep focus was in the film Citizen Kane, directed by Orson Welles. This frame has been well used to illustrate the innovative work of cinematographer Greg Toland. Now look at this frame. Everything is in focus, all the way from items on the desk in the foreground to the young Charles Foster Kane who can be seen playing freely outside. The young boy whose fate is being decided by the three adults inside is still in focus despite his distance from the other characters. The filmmakers went to great lengths to achieve this effect, but while missing a shallow depth of field, this image still displays a great sense of depth. I would argue that this frame has more depth to it as an image than many shots with blurred backgrounds. So how is this achieved? The answer is lots of attention to composition and lighting. We have the two actors in the foreground as they decide the boy's future, but the eye of the viewer is drawn to the boy via the actor in the middle ground, standing to the left of the frame. Our eyes are then drawn to the boy, aided by him being perfectly framed in the window. Humans instinctively follow the gaze of other humans, especially if they are expressing distress. Now, if you follow the gaze of the standing adult to the left of the frame, his gaze passes directly over the window in the background. Now, could we recreate this with a smartphone? The smartphone's natural deep depth of field is going to help us recreate this famous frame from Citizen Kane. However, we would struggle with the dynamic range required to expose the exterior as well as the interior. When shooting interiors in daylight, windows get blown out. However, most likely this scene was achieved by shooting the whole thing in a contained set, so the exterior lighting would have been completely under Toland's control. Either that or they might have used some kind of back projection, in which case yes, you could definitely achieve this with a smartphone and a contained set and or back projection. So, to create a sense of depth in a shot with deep focus, we need to rely more on theatrical techniques. There is no focal depth of field on a theatre stage, therefore lighting design, set design, and staging of the actors becomes key. It's perhaps no surprise then that Orson Welles came directly from a theatre background before directing Citizen Kane. Notice how the camera movement reinforces the sense of depth in the image. A rack focus in filmmaking and television production is the practice of changing the focus of the lens during a shot. The term can refer to small or large changes of focus. If the focus is shallow, then the technique becomes more noticeable. In professional films, a camera assistant called a focus puller is responsible for rack focusing. Pulling focus during a shot is a standard technique used constantly in professional filmmaking. The idea is to draw the viewer's attention from one subject, usually an actor, to another. You will see this done countless times during many film and TV productions. Filmic Pro is very good for pulling focus. You can even set it to pull focus automatically. Now first, you open Filmic Pro. Now open Manual Controls. Move the focus wheel to the first focus point. Tap the focus point line on the wheel to set the first focus point. Move the focus wheel to the second focus point. Now tap the focus point line on the wheel to set the second focus point. Now tap the mark you wish to start your focus pull from. To start the focus pull, tap on the mark you wish to end the pull at. Alternatively, tap on the small arrow if available. Adjust the focus pull speed using the variable speed slider. Professional cinematographers must never use autofocus. Even with a small crew, the camera operator and/or cinematographer will want to employ a focus puller. A focus puller's job is nothing more than controlling the focus of the camera during the shot. The fact that a dedicated crew member has the task of pulling focus, even on productions with limited budgets, should tell you exactly how important this job is to cinematography. Meanwhile, autofocus is not yet good enough to take on the job of a skilled focus puller. One reason for this is the creative nature of the focus pull itself. The cinematographer and director will decide where and how to move the focus, depending on what the actors are doing in the scene. On the other hand, autofocus simply focuses on an object it detects within a defined frame. This means that what the camera focuses on is harder to control. While professional filmmakers don't use autofocus during a take, we can use it to set focus before filming. In Filmic Pro, this is done by moving the rectangle box over the object we employ a focus puller while filming with an app for remote control via another device. But any lagging would mess up your focus pull. But if the object of the shot is likely to change distance from the camera during the shot, what can we do? For example, if you are tracking the subject, or the subject moves nearer or further from the camera during the scene, one option is to use a continuous autofocus. Now, setting the continuous autofocus means the camera will be constantly searching the image for the subject during the whole take. In Filmic Pro, by double tapping the focus rectangle, you expand the rectangle and switch to continuous focus. Now the autofocus of your smartphone camera will adjust during the shot. If you keep the focus rectangle unlocked, the rectangle can be moved manually during a shot. This gives you some manual control over the focus without the need of a focus puller. However, you have no control over the speed of the focus change or the speed at which the autofocus finds the new focus. Aside from the previous methods, you can also simply lock focus.
Oh, wait, follow
This method requires
Padahal
the
ini
subject
500
to remain at the same distance from the camera.
Jadi 500 terakhir aku kan tahun 5 terus ngono jadi 500
Iya, saya ini mau itu
Dik.
Perhaps talking to the
ada
camera.
apa ini enggak? Anak-anak biru yang foto
Hah?
enggak foto anak-anak biru foto
Try to
aja dulu ya streamingnya hari ini. Besok lanjut
Jadi
lagi.
kalau ada 3-4 pilihan, kalau pertama bisa menggunakan fingerprint, habis itu bisa menggunakan passcode, dan bisa menggunakan